Well, in the very beginning of the story, so in the prologue, she's already found something in her son's bedroom that makes her concerned, but she doesn't do anything about it right away because there's ways to just kind of write it off or forget about it. And then she's a counselor in a high school on the North Shore of Chicago, and there is apparently there's a girl's death that gets ruled as suicide. Then there's another girl's death that also gets ruled as suicide. And these two girls were friends. And so I don't want to give anything away, but we quickly find out that that crime is more complicated, that it involves other people. And so that's how she gets pulled into it. So she's struggling with losing her job because the school doesn't believe that she handled that she did not share information about the girls when she should have, but also she's just a scapegoat. They just want her to kind of disappear for a little while. And then she becomes aware that even though Benjamin doesn't have many friends, that he was in fact in contact with these two girls and seems to have been friends with one of them. And so that's how the story gets launched, and it goes from there. With What Boys Learn, it was a very clear question I asked myself. So I'd finished Deepest Lake, and that was about a mother and a daughter. And then I thought, because I'm the mother of a daughter and a son, I thought, well, if I made it about a mother and a son, what plot presents itself to me? And I always say, unfortunately, what came to mind immediately was not a mother whose son has been a victim of a crime. Unfortunately, what came to mind was a mother whose son maybe was involved in crime, involved in foul play. Not because my child has ever done that, and I've never been a parent who's been, had their kid dragged in to be interrogated in a police station, but that really struck me as a mother's very real anxiety. I had not yet read Defending Jacob when I wrote the first draft. I did read it after that, and I think that's a really good comp title. There's been a number of books like that about and TV shows, Netflix's Adolescence, about parents worrying that their son has committed a crime. And in fact, I think there's a whole sort of explosion of those ideas right now because that's the climate that we're in. And so it started for me in that personal question, but as I wrote, it became more of a cultural contemporary question of what's happening to our boys, who is influencing them, who is defining masculinity. And again, from a very empathetic perspective, not just to slap a label on boys at all, but to really think about what a difficult situation they're in, how much boys need role models, what happens if they turn to the wrong role models. And then again, looking at from the mother's perspective, Abby Rosso, who is a single mom living on the North Shore of Chicago. She also happens to be not as wealthy as the people she's living among. Um, but really thinking, okay, if you were that mother and you opened a drawer or went into your kid's room and found something questionable, what would you do? And then later, if your child is accused of a crime, how do you have those conversations? My character, Abby, she tries to talk to her son. But as we know, that doesn't mean your kid's going to give you the answers, right? I mean, you have to read into it. And then what happens if you don't want to be part of a self-fulfilling prophecy where you're the parent who thinks, I'm afraid my kid has done something wrong. Well, now is that just going to make the situation worse? So in the case of my character, Abby, she has dark things in her own background. When she was a teen, things she experienced. She has a brother who is in prison, who fits the profile of what we would call a psychopath. Psychologists would say someone with antisocial personality disorder with psychopathic traits. So if you have someone in your family who has already done terrible things, if you as a young woman have already been a victim of violence, then what happens when you look at men you're dating, when you look at your teenage sons? It's both the I want to love these people, but I'm also worried about what they could do. And then again, now the cultural question of where we are in time, where we are seeing men, powerful men, businessmen, politicians clearly getting away with crimes. What kind of message is that sending to teen boys? So Benjamin's point of view doesn't come into like the last third of the book. So we've already spent a lot of time with him, and he comes across, a certain way. Bit of a smart ass, resistant, still very intelligent, still very driven. By the time I finally got to jump into his POV, it was such an incredible pleasure because it felt like here we've been blocked from understanding him, and now we finally get to find out how he's been thinking, how he thinks of himself, and allow his kind of personality and sass and intelligence to come out more on the page. So I had so much fun being inside Benjamin's head. I would say that was the most fun part of writing the book. As it turns out, Um, I will say my husband made a whole bunch of playlists of all these songs that are about boys doing terrible things, men doing terrible things. Anyway, so that's fun. He was making playlists for me, but that has nothing to do with Benjamin's character. Where Benjamin came alive on the page for me, he's a swimmer. So he is trying to, in the course of the novel, he is getting ready to take a lifeguard test. Again, he's lower middle class, and so through the help of a friend, he's been attending a pool and trying to work on his swimming. Um, and so through that, I could see sort of his drivenness, his frustration, his awareness that he is not the same as all his other kids, that he doesn't have a lot of friends, that he's also not rich and doesn't dress the way the other kids do. And so putting him in that sort of fancy suburb world where he is visiting this pool, that helped me develop his character. And the swimming matters later in the story as well. So there is a character, there's a psychologist. My character Abby is also a counselor in a high school, although she loses her job early in the story. And then she stumbles into another psychologist, local psychologist named Curtis. And he was one of her college teachers. And so he is someone early in the story who she turns to, hoping that he can be the one to help Benjamin. So usually I'm not a big outliner for most of my books. With What Boys Learn, I just had finished going through many, many revisions of Deepest Lake. And I thought, let me just see, just for fun, for a challenge, I want to outline this book. So I did kind of roughly outline it. My experience with that is number one, I could do it. And I would say that to anybody watching this. Like, you might think, I can't outline something. Well, just give yourself one night, stay up as late as you want, and just try it. And then you can go back and change things. And so I did. A lot of the book changed, a lot got added. Maybe half of what's in the book is still from the outline, but I really enjoyed the experience of trying to do that. Now, having said that about where the twists come from, on this book and the next books I'm writing, often I will have one big twist in mind, but then other twists get added as well that complicate it. So Abby has actually, it's an ex-boyfriend, it's a cop, totally fine. It's a cop named Robert. And that was really fun too, because I wanted to write about a single mom who is still dating and how difficult that would be because every man you're dating is going to be spending time with your children and could be yet another role model. And we're also in a time right now where people have very mixed feelings about policemen. And I wanted a character who might be hard to read in the beginning. You know, is this a completely sympathetic character? Is it a not sympathetic character? I hope I've been able to create kind of a fun character who is imperfect, um, who we don't really know how to read in the beginning.